Hi, folks. Welcome to Crisco's Corner. Unfiltered commentary. And not your truth, the real truth. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thank you for your support. Okay, welcome back to Crisco's Corner. Today we have two guys just shooting the breeze. Mike, we're both from upstate New York. Mike is a truck driver and a member of the Republican committee here locally in upstate New York. We've worked on a lot of campaigns, and we talk a lot about politics. So we thought, hey, you know what? Let's do a podcast episode with it. So welcome, Mike.
Hey, John, how you doing?
I'm good. And, you know, we talk all the time. I mean, constantly.
Yeah, we do, all the time.
I mean, I probably talk to you more than you talk to your wife. But anyway.
Well, politically, anyways.
Yeah, about politics. But, yeah, we were talking earlier that we were talking about the Constitution and the Supreme Court and some of the things that are going on. And I said, you know what? Let's just record an episode. And you were nice enough to
why not?
Do it. So here we are. I'll tell you.
Absolutely.
I'll tell you, what do you think is going to happen? Supreme Court just ruled. Brett Kavanaugh was a swing vote, and he just was part of the majority of 5-4 that the evictions moratorium was unconstitutional, and the CDC and the president didn't have the authority, and they kept it on until July 31st because it was coming up anyway. And now Biden didn't give the order because he can be impeached for it, but he suggested strongly to the CDC to extend the moratorium, and they did. What do you think is going to happen?
That's a good question. I'm very curious to see if the Attorney General actually enforces U.S. law and says, no, you can't do that, and it has to be sent through Congress. And if he doesn't, then that's going to send a signal, I believe, to everyone that Biden doesn't care about the Constitution, and he doesn't care about U.S. law. All he cares about is his own word, kind of similar to Cuomo.
Right. Well, it's funny. I saw a video earlier on YouTube. It was a judge in Tennessee, and he said there's a federal district that is Ohio, I think Kentucky, Tennessee, and I think it might be even Indiana. And that federal judge and that circuit court ruled that these moratoriums are unconstitutional. So he's going to allow evictions in the state of Tennessee, being they're part of that federal district. But what do you think will happen? Now, you got to remember the Attorney General of the United States is Merrick Garland. Supposedly, the leftists said the guy got screwed out of a Supreme Court seat, even though he didn't. What happens if he just says, I'm not going to go after people that break the order of the Supreme Court? What do you think is going to happen?
You know, that's, like I said, that's a very good question. And honestly, I think we're in very uncharted waters at this point. I don't think any of us have ever seen this in our time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, not in our lifetime anyway. Lincoln, I know, ignored a few things, but they were actually in a real shooting war. It was a little different.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's uncharted waters. And if the AG doesn't enforce the law on the president, then where's the checks and balances of the country at that point?
Yeah, it's very much it's very much like the Attorney General here in New York State. After over 15,000 seniors were killed because of Andy Cuomo's, or I'll be respectful, Governor Cuomo's orders, that there was at least an investigation done by the Attorney General's office, but she jumped all over the fact that he acted like a jerk to a bunch of women. I find that very fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think there's a lot more to that story, and there's more people that would go down that could potentially burn with Cuomo or Governor Cuomo if they were to investigate the whole nursing home incident with the COVID deal. That's what I think.
Yeah, but the thing
I think
is,
a lot more heads are going to roll and burn.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, the part that really, really gets to me, the evil part, is the fact that these progressives and now Democrats are the same. At least they control the parties. You might as well say they're the same. Their ideology is more important than human lives.
Well, remember, AOC said it's not what's factually correct, it's what's morally correct. And the problem is, who is choosing what is morally correct?
Yep.
And those definitions are never explained to us. It's basically like anything that they disagree with is going to be morally incorrect.
In the
It's
goalpost.
just another way to destroy anybody, and you see it all the time. If they don't agree with somebody, they attack them with they're sexist, they're racist, and whatever other ism that's out there at the moment.
Yeah, they don't attack the issue or the person's arguments. They attack the person personally because there's nowhere else to go.
Correct.
I know
that is right.
I know they did that to me in my store. I mean, you were around, you saw. But
oh yeah.
But the thing is, though, the ideology takes precedence over human lives. In this case, over 15,000. Now, the weird part is, and maybe I'm stretching it a little bit. You know, maybe it's my conservative bias. But that was the mantra of all the socialist countries in the last 100 years. We don't care how many people die. The ideology has to get through.
Correct.
And that's a dangerous road. It really is.
Well, unfortunately, right now, the left pretty much controls media at this moment. And that's really, really what scares me. Because as long as they control it, and it's pretty obvious. I mean, look at what Cuomo has done. Look at what Biden has done in the past, going all the way back with his comments all the way back to the mid 70s, and it's just crickets.
Yep.
But Trump, all he's got to do is just burp wrong, and they're all over.
In fact, I'll show off some of my little side effects here. This is the response from the mainstream media concerning Biden in his past. Crickets. I like that.
Yeah, that is correct.
But it's amazing to me. Like, I'm a big Trump supporter. I know you are, and I still am. And the thing is, though, they made up so much stuff about him. They didn't have to. The guy's got a lot of character flaws. I'm not going to lie. But I didn't care about his character. I cared about his issues. And he did a lot of things right. And in fact, I read somewhere the other day, I'm paraphrasing, that a sitting state senator said this was probably the greatest achievement of the Trump administration. He should be proud of it. It was unbelievable what happened. And it's never been done in the history of the country before, and I give him credit. It's his greatest achievement. And that was Senator Michael Caine, Hillary Clinton's running mate in 2016.
Yep.
And Trump has said repeatedly, now I got to premise this because it's YouTube, take your doctor's advice, don't take advice from guys like Mike and I or anybody else on YouTube. Sit down with your doctor and do what's best for you. That way I'm covered. But the thing of it is, though, Trump has come out. He got the vaccine right away. Governor DeSantis and a whole slew of Republicans. I saw a video the other day the GOP put out on YouTube. It was like 10 minutes of Republicans endorsing the vaccine. Where do they... and here's the weird part. Somebody said the other day concerning Trump, why don't you give him back his Twitter account? So we can go on Twitter and say, take the vaccine. I mean, there's probably millions of people that would have taken it if you hadn't borrowed them. It's crazy.
Correct.
But there was enough stuff about him. You didn't have to make up stuff. And that's when I knew that they were disingenuous. I mean, there's some stuff we can't even say on the air here, but, you know, it's just amazing to me. I've never heard... I've been involved in local politics a long time, and I've been interested in politics since I was a boy, and I'm 64. And, you know, they always twist the truth, borderline lie. But this is like whole new ground here. My God. I mean, I remember made a CNN and every website that Trump's wife, Melania, was passing secrets to Vladimir Putin at a state dinner. And they showed
she didn't need the interpreter. That was the whole thing.
Yeah, they were going through an interpreter. It's got to be a real pain in the butt. And they both realized they both speak fluent German because Putin was the head of KGB in East Germany. So his German was perfect. So they got rid of the interpreters and talked like humans. And I just what I mean by why they have to make up stuff. Because they couldn't go against his policies. They couldn't do it. The border's a mess. We're kind of digressing a little bit off the Constitution, but I think this is all connected.
It is all connected. And, you know, I've noticed that there are key points of Trump policies that Biden isn't going against or isn't getting rid of, but yet the news doesn't say a word about it, and they also don't give Trump credit; they give Biden credit.
Yeah.
I mean, for God's sakes, I mean this. The vaccines were formed under the Trump administration.
Now they're all saying, well, he wasn't in the lab, and actually did the vaccines. No, but we both know Donald Trump, at least as far as media goes, this guy is not shy. He'll put a fire.
No, he's not.
He put a fire under their behinds, and I don't think anybody else in the Oval Office could have done it that quickly, and had the powers that be make a vaccine that fast if it wasn't for Donald Trump. I mean, there's nobody that can argue against that.
Well, unlike just going and just granting somebody like, say, Johnson and Johnson and the money and saying, look, I want you to test this, develop this, and give us a vaccine. Here's $10 million. He didn't do that. He called upon these guys to get it done. Right. Rather than just throw money at the problem, unlike presidents in the past.
Yeah, and on top of that, he had to give him a waiver. I mean, there's no way they could have developed it without it because there wasn't the testing required under normal circumstances, and the FDA gave them an emergency waiver. So that way you can't sue the pharmaceutical company if the quote-unquote vaccine does something to you. And, I know that sucks if you're one of the people that got screwed over, but it had to be done that way. There's no way they could have done it without it.
Yeah, you are correct. It had to be done because it was moving so rapidly, and I mean, a lot of people, especially in California and New York, they were dying. I mean, we've all seen the footage of the hospitals being bogged down, the mass graves on Potter's Island in New York City. I mean, we've all seen the news clippings.
Yeah.
So something had to get done. And he got it done, but yeah, he's the biggest so-and-so as far as the left goes.
And I will say, though, I mean, people are coming down on the extensive lockdowns. Now, you either agree with the extensive lockdowns or you don't. I call them draconian lockdowns, so you know where I stand. But the fact of the matter is they're blaming Trump. Trump does not have the authority. Only governors do.
That's correct.
And I just don't understand. He did go along with them. I mean, that's the one thing I criticize him for. That and his hiring selections, but that's a different issue for another time. But
right.
But they say he was a dictator. They say he was this. They say he was that. I can't think of one instance, where President Trump, while he was president, went against an existing law or a judge's order once.
I can't think of any either. And just to add to the whole dictator theory, all right, when all this started, we all knew it was going to be bad. There's no questions about that. And let's talk about a dictator, which is Andy Cuomo, governor of New York State. All right, he locked businesses down. In Broome County, I think the numbers are right around 30% of all businesses closed forever. Hopefully somebody else will take their place. But
I know. I was one of them.
Yeah, and just an example of this, Donald Trump ordered that hospital ship into New York Harbor to help. How many patients actually hit there?
And the Javits Center. And the
Javits Center. Cuomo was more worried about going against Trump and pushing his own agenda which his own agenda was obviously power. I mean, he locked the whole state down. Rather than just saying, oh, thank you very much, Mr. President. I really appreciate you sending this hospital ship. At least that way he wouldn't have had to put anybody into the nursing homes, which there was absolutely no call for.
And that's where I see, again, what I said earlier about their ideology takes precedence over human lives. Because the ideology of the Democrats now, the progressive Democrats, and they all are, and even if they all aren't progressives, which I technically believe they're not, they're allowing the 25% of the progressives to take over their parties. So you might as well say they're the same. Their ideology takes precedence over thousands, tens of thousands in this case, of human lives.
Yes, and the other thing is let's talk about other things like Cuomo tried using COVID to tell people that they couldn't meet at their grandmother's house, or their aunt's house, or their parents' house for the holidays.
Yep.
He actually tried to pull that.
Yep.
And then on top of that, what about, here's another example. When my daughter had cancer back in January, during her surgery for ovarian cancer, I had to sit in the parking lot. My wife, they allowed my wife to go in, but I had to sit in the parking lot and wait in Syracuse for any kind of updates that I could get during that surgery. And then when she got out of surgery, I still couldn't go up and visit with her. When she went to the emergency room before the surgery, I couldn't go in with her. And you're telling me that this is not a dictator putting these rules together? Come on.
Yeah, it's I mean, she probably
That's cruel.
What she had to do, text you out in the parking lot? What was going on?
Yeah, exactly. And she had to go through this whole thing alone. Why? Because of the frickin' mandates that our wonderful governor decided to put together. What you and look at all these people that they died alone. Their parent, why? Tell me why. If somebody's passing away of cancer, old age, whatever the case is, the family can't go into their room and say goodbye because of COVID. Come on.
Now the thing is, though, it's funny. Somebody said the other day, we're never going to really know about the COVID deaths because there's a big difference between died of COVID and died with COVID.
This is true.
And we're never going to know. In fact, we're never going to know what's been done as far as pandemics go in the U.S. and around the rest of the world is you isolate the vulnerable people, in this case, the people with pre-existing conditions, cancer, obese, diabetes, there's quite a list, and seniors above a certain age. Now, if we had isolated those and not shut everything down, what would have happened? Would it have been the same number of deaths? Would herd immunity go quicker? See, we're never going to know because it wasn't tried.
You are correct. It wasn't tried.
Yeah, and there's going to be death. I'm sorry. It's just the way of the world. And I see the commercials all the time on St. Jude's Hospital and other hospitals. 3-year-old children get terminal cancer. It sucks. It's horrible. And it's sad. And that's just the nature of things. You can't get around that.
No, you can't. Unfortunately, if your time card's up, it doesn't matter. I mean, you're going to go no matter what. If it's a COVID, getting hit by a car, whatever the case is, if it's your time, it's your time. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it's like, you've got a big house, and say you're in the South, and they have a termite problem. They spray all the time. So you've got extensive termites in your house. They haven't caused any extensive damage yet, but they very well could. So the Democrat solution? Just burn the house down.
That's basically what they did.
And I wonder, I go back and forth between how incredibly effing stupid they are, or they're just evil and want to destroy the economy on purpose. I go back and forth depending on which day you catch me. I haven't decided yet.
Well, and that's going to go back to another question, too. Now, when we start talking about the deficit spending that's been happening due to COVID, all right, prior to COVID, I believe, and don't quote me on this, but I think the numbers were right around $458 billion is what we were paying in interest alone to the deficit. Now, that's going to be a lot higher now. Now, at what point are we either going to is the government going to have to raise taxes just for interest or start taking programs away because they just can't afford to pay the interest, pay the payments, or are they just going to file bankruptcy, or what's going to happen? I mean, we have a lot of potential crisis down the road, and nobody's talking about it, and it's all financial, which is horrible.
Now, I remember it was many years ago. Those of you that follow my channel know, but those of you that don't, I was a councilman here in upstate New York in the early 2000 to 2007. And 2008 is when the economy took a dump. And I remember local property taxes went up a lot, well over 50%. And a lot of that was because of the pension funds. Now, this stimulus package, well, the pension funds that were invested were going down, so the local municipalities had to fork in more money, which means you have to raise property taxes, and they were high enough already. But the issue, I think, this time was Why Biden for them? No matter how many people died, I think it's about money in part. Cuomo, Whitmer, Gavin Newsom, there's a whole bunch of them. They needed bailing out. And they saw this crisis as a way to not admit that their policies were maybe counterproductive financially and they're putting their states in a hole. But if they can just crank out some more money, they can bail all these states out and there's no repercussions to their bad, crappy policies.
Yeah, it's true. Interesting theory.
I'm wondering because Rahm Emanuel, ex-mayor of Chicago, former chief of staff of President Obama, said one thing Democrats do, never let a crisis go to waste.
Yeah, it's true.
And I really believe. Look at the money they got. My God. The states are all flush with cash.
Yeah, but who's going to pay for it at the end of the day? I mean, at this point, we've mortgaged our great-great-great-grandchildren's future at this point. If not further down the line, we really have.
And I'm wondering. I mean, I haven't really done any checking. We live in New York State, but there's California, Michigan, other states. The stimulus money the states got, how much of their debt did they get rid of with the money? It'd be interesting to know because if they didn't pay off,
it would be.
If they paid off very little, just to make it look decent, like say 10%. Look, see, we paid off some debt. They should have paid almost all the money they got. Should have paid. We'll say at least half of the stimulus money the states got should have paid off debt.
Yeah, exactly.
And prop up their pension funds and whatever other money it cost them for the pandemic. Because in all fairness, I'm a conservative person, and I think unlawfully these governors closed it down. Then they're liable to pay these people. They made it so they can't work or they can't run their business. They owe them. Now I know you and I don't.
Absolutely.
You and I don't agree with that as conservatives, but it's only fair. But the problem is everybody's got to pay. And who's going to pay? I don't know. My granddaughter's going to be 3 next February.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be generations from now. We're all going to be talking about or paying for COVID. As a matter of fact, it's going to be in the history books. And I wouldn't be surprised if someday there's going to be a 100th year anniversary of COVID-19 and the deficit will still be there for it. Now, speaking of 2008, and I'm sure you remember a lot of the things that were going on during that time period, when they had the bailouts for the banks and George Bush too, which I was no fan of, by the way.
And by the way,
the
Occupy people were right. They just went about it the wrong way.
I totally agree with that because I remember now, as you mentioned, I was a truck driver, or I'm a truck driver, and I used to deliver in Midtown and Lower Manhattan at the time. And right after the bailouts, there was a charter bank. It was 11 o'clock at night. I was making a delivery to a Quiznos on Church Street. And they were having a huge party inside of the bank. You could see them on the first floor across the street, having this nice catered party right after the bailouts went out.
Yep.
Well, and now here's 2 questions. Number one, obviously, the taxpayers that couldn't pay for their homes and the banks got bailed out, they got hosed twice because their tax dollars have to pay for the bank bailout, plus they lost their house on top of that too.
Or they were so far
I think was ridiculous.
Or they were so far underwater, they had a $200,000 mortgage, and now your house is worth $1.25, and they just walked away.
Exactly. Do you blame them? Absolutely not. Okay, but if we have another financial crisis in the next 5 years, which I think we're heading there, one way or another, how are they going to bail them out?
Well, I
mean, they're going to raise the debt ceiling again.
I don't think you're going to see bank failures in lending institutions. Well, I think the economy is going to be destroyed is inflation destroys the middle class and lower middle class exclusively. So if you have $100,000 in your 401k and you're ready to retire, 5 years from now, that might be worth $60,000. That's where the that's where the crime is. And everybody else in the top 5% have actually gone up in wealth by 40%. Meanwhile, you're losing 60% of your money. And that's going to be a crap storm because that's millions and millions of people.
Yeah, and then speaking of that, of some of these billionaires that have gained more wealth, I mean, for the most part, more power to them. But let's talk about Jeff Bezos. That COVID was a Christmas present to that guy.
Yeah.
Everybody, rather than ordering from, say, going to a regular Walmart, well, not even Walmart because they were allowed to stay open, but the mom and pop shops that couldn't stay open, they had to close. Rather than going there, and then the news was talking about how horrible this COVID was and it was going to kill you if you go outside. People started, and then they got their unemployment plus the extra $600 at the time.
Right.
So what did they do? They ordered everything online,
Yep.
and everything came from Amazon.
Well, the funny part is there's always that urban legend, as I say, or political legend that all the Democrats in the South during the Jim Crow days and the racist days all switched to the Republican Party, which is a lie. They got voted out of office. But here's the thing that really happened. There was a switch. Not too long ago, 10 years ago, maybe 15. Now, for somebody that's 20 years old, that's a long time, but for us, it's not. It used to be the Republicans always got the hit. You're the party of the rich and the big corporations. The odd part is now the Democrat Party and their progressives, which now they're attached at the hip to international billionaire companies and rich people. And it's the Republicans that are looking out for the middle class and lower middle class. That's the real switch that happened.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a huge Democrat donor right now is Warren Buffett. I mean, he's a huge Democrat and a huge donor. So come on, it's not the Democratic Party is not looking after the working man anymore. It's all basically about themselves. I mean, it's pretty much turned into a business.
I'll tell you the truth. I think a lot of this, you can go, maybe not the only reason, but one of the, we'll say, top 3 reasons. And it was a great idea at the time, and I even thought so too, was allowing China into the World Trade Organization. They said, well, you're right. They are an oppressive communist country. The only way that they're going to change if you allow them into the economy of the world, and over time, capitalism, or free enterprise, as I like to call it, will take foot and they'll come around more democratically, and just the opposite happened.
Yeah, now they've become a monster.
Yeah, and they're uncontrollable. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean,
yep.
I mean, they own, what is it, in Texas, I think there's this huge plot of supposedly windmills for energy generation right next to the Air Force Base, one of the biggest, most secretive Air Force bases in Texas, owned by the CCP, the Communist Chinese Party. Do you think they put that wind farm there by accident?
Not at all.
Who the hell approved that? And it's not an isolated incident. It's everywhere in the world. And I don't know. But let's go back to, we're all on the same subject, but what happens when you own a big apartment building, say in Manhattan, and it's 100 units? You're a fairly rich person, but you're not a billionaire by any means, but you do okay. And you start evicting people. And the CDC threatens that person with jail time and over $200,000 in fines. What's going to happen?
With the Supreme Court saying that it's unconstitutional, you think that would be a no-brainer. But in this day and age, I don't even know how to answer that.
Well, the funny part was how I was going to say President Biden, but he's not really the president. It's an unseen, unelected table of bureaucrats that are really running the country, but he's the mouthpiece for them, so I'll say him. He said, I'm not going to extend the mandate on evictions. I'm going to strongly suggest that the CDC do it. That way, it's not an impeachable offense, and I haven't broken the law.
Yep, that's true.
It's so who goes to jail? The head of the CDC?
Evidently not. I don't know.
So, I mean, it goes without saying that if the roles were reversed and it was Donald Trump that told his
Oh, they would have
CDs
been calling for his impeachment.
oh, they would have burned down Trump Tower.
Yep.
But what's going to happen? How can this guy, you've got to have some means, or you've got to have an organization behind you for the legal part of it, because it costs a ton to fight this thing. If your attorney general in your state, in this case New York, or the U.S. attorney general, just looks up at the sky and goes, I don't see anything. I mean, what can really happen? And it isn't just New York. It's going to be other states as well. Something's going to happen.
Something's got to happen, because the governments can't expect landlords to pay taxes when they're not getting any rent. They can't do it.
And I don't think the average person out there, anybody listening to this, I used to own two-family houses that I rented out. And you can get all the judgments in the world you want. Now, I can't speak outside of New York. You can't get the money if you sue in court and win back rent. Where are you going to get the money from, especially if they don't work? Where are you supposed to garnish?
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
you just take the losses, and the vast majority of landlords, not by so much rental units, but by number of landlords, are just middle class people in their 50s, 60s that use that house as a retirement. They live on one floor and rent out the other two apartments or one apartment, and they use that to subsidize their retirement. Those are the ones that are going to get screwed over.
Yes, they are.
Then I guess it's a question that I can't seem to get an answer to, because nobody knows the answer. People smarter than I can't figure it out. I did an episode the other day on between the lockdowns, the huge deficits, the screwing over middle-class people by the millions, which are a big voting bloc, the main voting bloc. Democrats are doing everything in their power to make sure they lose in the next year in the midterms. And I have to ask, what the hell's their strategy? I'm missing it.
I don't understand it either. Especially since, as we're going into the midterm elections, okay, the districts are going to be redrawn before the election happens. And for crying out loud, enough seats are going away from blue states in Congress to be able to flip Congress as it is. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that works.
There's going to be a crap ton of lawsuits from Democrats going against Republicans in these red states. I think 28 states have, or is it 26, that have governors and legislatures that are Republican. In other words, it isn't split.
Right.
And I can see the lawsuits piling up, but they got to be solved pretty quick. Because there's a drop dead date for redistricting. I don't know what it is. I think it's towards the end of this year.
I think it is.
And what's going to happen in all these lawsuits? And there's going to be hundreds, if not hundreds of lawsuits. And I'm wondering how quick they're going to get solved, number one. And number two is how they're going to be ruled on. And in fact, if I was a governor of, we'll say Florida, and there's a congressional district around Miami, and the court rules that it was gerrymandered by the Republicans, and you have to redo it. If I was Ron DeSantis, you know what I would say? I go up to the mic I will go up to the mic and I go, okay, I'll start going along with the federal court's rulings. When you guys start going along with the Supreme Court rulings, let me know when that happens, and don't bother me. I'm leaving.
I agree with that 100%.
I'm leaving the district like it is. Come down and arrest me. I dare you.
Yeah.
Oh man, talk about separating. That would, not many people know, but if you do some research, when South Carolina left, states went quick after that. There was talk about it for decades. Even New England at one time wanted to secede, believe it or not, years ago. There was nothing new. And then when finally one of them actually did it, it was unstoppable. 4, 5, 6 right in a row went in 5 months, and everybody was shocked. How could it have happened so quick? It was like rolling a car down a hill in neutral. You have no idea where it's going to go, and you can't stop it.
Yep, agreed.
And I don't know. I'll tell you, that's what I would do if I was DeSantis. That's what I would do if I was Governor Abbott in Texas. Of course, he's got a primary challenger in Lieutenant Colonel West. who's very conservative, so he's probably Abbott's gonna lean towards the conservative side, just shore up his base. But I don't know. I mean, he's not doing much for the border crisis. I mean, why isn't Abbott send down thousands of National Guard troops? I don't get it.
Yeah, exactly.
I guess they are,
And
some of them.
yeah,
but-
and then on national TV, Biden told the news reporters, "I'll let you know when you can go to the detention facilities that they had on the border," which I found that interesting. In other words, that we don't want you guys to tape any more of this anymore. It's over. It's done with.
Yeah,
Trump's
well-
out of office.
Yeah, we'll let you know when we fix them up a little bit so they look like halfway decent, then we'll let you in.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I know the most of the cable news and the vast majority of social media is controlled by leftists, but not all. And this stuff's got to be getting out slowly over time. It has to the 10% in the middle that really decide what elections are.
Yeah, well, as long as the left controls the media, they can control the narrative, and that's really what the problem is. As is said, the most trusted man in America, Walter Cronkite. Unfortunately, we don't have any more newscasters like that any longer. They're doing exactly what they're told to do by whoever owns the place, basically.
And he was an ultra lefty. He just didn't show it.
Yes, that's correct.
I mean, he had a job to do. I mean, if I'm a dentist and I'm filling a tooth, I'm putting in a filling, I'm not going to start talking about politics. It has nothing to do with the job.
Right.
But I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, do the Republicans have, what's the Spanish word? They have huevos enough to say no? When they start taking guns from people, are the local sheriff's department or the local state troopers going to intervene? I don't know. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, is it going to happen? And if it doesn't, it's over.
Yep, you're right.
So I don't know. Nobody wants to be the first one, but it's the Constitution's at stake. And it's a big deal. It's a huge deal. And it's interesting, the new lawsuit now going to the Supreme Court. I think it is the Third Amendment or the Fifth Amendment. I forget which one it is. That where you can't quarter British troops in your house without your okay. They're using that. They're using that to sue about the eviction moratorium. Because technically, under the law, anybody is an American citizen. It can be a member of the militia, and we're housing them without being compensated.
Wow.
It just came up a couple days ago, and some of the legal scholars said it was a brilliant maneuver.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're housing people without being compensated by federal and state mandate. That's against, it's either the Third or Fifth Amendment. I forgot which one. It's very interesting. If you're a law geek, I guess it's pretty cool. But if you're the average guy walking around, but I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I know these people. I mean, there was one guy that owned like a 20, 30 unit building in New York City that said 3 of his tenants brought brand new boats. Really?
Bought brand new boats, but they're not paying him.
No. And here's the other thing I think people don't think about that's coming. The clock is ticking on. They had the guy from Papa John's on Tim Pool's show the other night. Of course, he got thrown out, on bogus crap. And he was saying he knows some pizza guys in New York that are paying between $30 and $35 an hour to make pizzas. And they can't keep up.
Wow.
Now, here's the thing. When all this settles down, and whether they raise the minimum wage or not is immaterial, people go back to work because they have to. What's going to happen to those people that are currently working their butts off, that are making really good money, that take advantage of free enterprise? What's going to happen to them when all those people come back to work?
Oh, they're going to get screwed.
Yeah.
Bad.
Yeah. I mean, in all fairness, I had a small business for years. I mean, if I get hired today and some guy says, listen, John, we can't find anybody, I'm going to give you $25 an hour. And I'm going to say to him, okay, I want it in writing that when the economy starts opening up and you start hiring people, that you're not going to, one, lower my wage, or we can negotiate it. We can negotiate it, say, to 20 instead of 25, or you won't terminate me. I wonder if that's going on.
Yeah, then hire you back at a lower rate.
Yeah. Or agree to a rate. You can never go below $20, we'll say, whatever it is. These people are screwed.
Right.
So again, the responsible people that want to work are going to get screwed.
Absolutely.
I don't know.
Speaking of constitutional amendments, something that you just brought up that is very interesting, and nobody wants to discuss this either. When you start talking about the government taking people's guns away, nobody discusses the fact that the government in Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Chicago, they have been denying minorities their Second Amendment right for decades.
Yep.
Because you have to buy a permit, which I'm not sure what the numbers are. It used to be like $350 just for the application fee that was non-refundable for a firearm in New York City. And even police officers can't. An off-duty cop from Binghamton, for example, can't carry a sidearm in New York City because a permit has to be different. So that's how hardcore they are. Now, think about this for a second. If you're a minority working a minimum wage job, and $350 is going to be a lot of money to you at that point.
Sure.
All right, so you're not going to get your permit. But if you live in a really bad neighborhood, say the South Bronx or some parts of Brooklyn, like Pennsylvania Avenue.
South side of Chicago.
Yeah, south side of Chicago. If you buy a firearm just to have protection in your house and you're caught with it, now you get a gun charge on something that should be an amendment. It should be granted to you by the Second Amendment, not by Chicago or New York City or whatever that you have to pay for, which is ridiculous. And they're denying these people through financial means.
So, in other words, it's a poll tax for firearms.
Pretty much, yeah. That's exactly what it is.
I just thought of that just now as you were talking. It's a poll tax for firearms. And the poll taxes, of course, were eliminated in the U.S. and other countries in Europe because it was discriminatory towards low-income people.
That is correct.
And,
that is very, very correct.
And it's true. I'm glad they did it because it is discriminatory. You shouldn't have to pay to vote. I mean,
Yeah, but you also have a Second Amendment right. You live in a bad neighborhood. You want to protect you and your family. You shouldn't have to pay a non-refundable fee just for the application, and that doesn't even guarantee that you're going to get granted the permit.
And the thing is, though, I remember doing some research on the founders, and they were pretty brilliant guys. Even though they were very flawed people, they were still brilliant guys. And they made the Second Amendment short and sweet. In essence, from their point of view, it's as short and sweet as it gets, and it's idiot-proof.
Yeah, that's not true, unfortunately.
I don't forget how exactly it goes. The right to carry and bear arms shall not be infringed, and there's something to do with a militia in there, too, but that's about as simple as you can make it.
Correct.
And I just don't understand how in the world, like when I was in Tennessee in June, they just signed a bill down there. The governor signed it into law that you don't need a permit to own a firearm. You can open carry, but you have to go through the National Registry when you buy it, like everybody else.
Right.
That's it. No permit, no nothing. And you can open carry, you can do whatever you want as long as you're a certain age. And there's other requirements like some felons, some people with mental instabilities. There was some exemptions, which I think everybody would.
Yeah, those exemptions I can actually understand, but to blanket an entire city and say, hey, you can't have a gun because you can't afford the permit fees for this.
I don't, I'll tell you the truth. When you mention, especially the older progressives, the women especially, you mention guns, they go, oh my God, guns, and that's horrible. The fact of the matter is, I think the people that make these laws restrict the guns because they want the control. In other words,
Yeah, I think so.
we want to be responsible for your safety, so you owe us.
Yeah, but you know what's funny about that? When you start talking about we're going to be responsible for you, but in the next breath they want to talk about defunding the police. Also, let me remind your listeners that the average 911 response time to your house from the police is 19 minutes.
Yeah.
So let's just say somebody breaks into your house.
Now we're lucky where we live. By the way, I want to make that clear. Broome County Sheriff and the Binghamton Police are very good. They're not like big city forces at all. They actually do their job and enforce the law correctly.
That is correct. Now, the actual response time, in my opinion, actually starts as soon as the assailant breaks the window or gets through the door or whatever the case may be. Okay, now you got to wake up if it's in the middle of the night. You got to find your phone. You got to dial 911. Yep. Now, as soon as you do that, they pick up. You give them your address. At this moment, 19 minutes. 19 minutes is an awful long time when you have an assailant in your home.
Now, it was funny. There was a YouTube video I saw years ago, and they were talking about police times, and it was about the Second Amendment. And I forgot who it was. I wish I could remember. And he sat there. Now, normally when they do a YouTube video like I do, you don't want to just silence. He says, I'm going to time right now 5 minutes. And he had a little stopwatch. He says, those of you that think it's not a long time to wait 10 minutes when somebody breaks into your house and you're defenseless, let's time it for right now. He had a little stopwatch on the screen, and he sat there and stared at the camera for 5 minutes. It's a long time.
Well, it's even worse is if your children are sleeping in different rooms away from yours.
Yep.
Now you know that there's someone has broken into your house. Now you have to corral the kids up and get them into an area where you can barricade them in for their safety.
Yeah.
The second you start moving upstairs, the assailant is going to know that now you know he's there, and he knows that the police are inbound. Now, here's the two questions. Which one will he do? Will he try to escape the police, or will he B, try to kill you? Will he try to rape your wife, your daughter, kill your son?
Or just steal your...
19...
I mean, best case scenario, he just steals a lot of your stuff and leaves.
Right, because in 19 minutes, you can definitely do an awful lot of damage to a family. Yeah. Now, if you barricade yourself into one room and he comes through that room and you have a pistol or a rifle, it's over at that second. If you don't, and the police aren't there yet, you are now underneath that person's mercy.
And that's the other thing that I'm wondering, what's the Democrat strategy? Because I think it's true to a certain extent. I can't go into detail on last year's election because YouTube will pull this video down, so I can't discuss it. But we all know that white, college-educated women in the suburbs were the group that turned Democrat the most. That voted for Trump the first time, but not the second. Now, here's the funny part. Gun sales right now, year by year, are breaking records. And the new permits issued to gun owners are 70-something% I saw, suburban women.
Well, yeah.
Now, here's the thing. You want power and control? Why are you alienating the huge millions amount of people that put you in power? Now, here's the thing. This has nothing to do with law. You're a young mother with 2 or 3 kids. We'll say you're in your mid-30s. And somebody breaks in your house. You're going to pick up that Glock. And when he comes towards you or in your sight, you're going to unload that entire clip into him and ask questions later.
That's correct.
Nothing is more powerful and dangerous than a mother protecting their children. And I'll tell you,
right.
I'll tell you, man, I just don't see the strategy here. I don't.
I think that they live in a bubble, and whatever they think is true is it, almost the word of God to them.
Yeah, but these
ano-
these Congress members grew up in houses. They're regular people. They have family. They have friends. People they went to high school with. People they know in their community. Are they really? Are they cut themselves off from everybody that badly?
I think they have. I honestly think they have. I mean, you think about this. Now, you and I live in two totally different neighborhoods.
Right.
100%.
Yep. Anybody that
Okay.
knew the area, well, I'm not going to go into detail, but yeah.
Yeah, you and I live in two totally different neighborhoods. Your area where you live would be considered far more dangerous than mine.
Right.
Okay, up here on the mountain, I mean everything is quiet all the time. I mean, the only thing you may have to worry about here is a bear or mountain lion or something of that nature.
Yeah, you see signs.
Where-
you see signs that say "We shoot and then prosecute later."
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, people up here, gun control up here is just a personal suggestion up here.
Yeah.
Now, where you live, you would be, or how do I want to say this? The opportunity of somebody breaking into your house there is much higher than it is here. And just imagine if you lived in south side of Chicago or whatever. I mean, you've got the real, how do I want to say this? You've got the raw of what actually happens in society in bad neighborhoods. Me, myself, I don't.
No,
a lot of these politicians, they grow up in more in areas like I live in, opposed to what you do.
but a lot of the progressives haven't. That's the part I don't get. A lot of these people came from, I mean, we'll say S-holes. And of course, they probably use their gender and or their national or their minority status to go through, but they were there at one time and they saw it.
I know.
Have they forgotten it easily?
Well, for some reason they think if you get rid of all the guns, then nobody's ever going to get shot. Well, it was said best, I think.
Get rid of the legal guns, you mean?
Yeah, get rid of the legal guns. Well, even if you eliminate every firearm on the planet, it was said best, I believe, by Sammy the Bull Gravano when he said, listen, if you take everybody's guns away, I'm going to make a gun. I can make guns. I can make a banana gun, as he used to say.
That was before 3D printing.
That is correct. And like he said, now I know as a criminal, and he says his exact words were, I'm going to put on my criminal hat. And now I know you don't have a gun in your house. So I've just got to get to you before you call 911. That's all I need to do. And that is so true.
It's funny.
True.
I did an episode on Second Amendment a few weeks ago. And Admiral Yamamoto, he was the big shot in the Japanese Navy. And he was against Pearl Harbor attack. He went to the University of Chicago, believe it or not. And he knew the Americans.
Yes, a lot of those Japanese officers were educated in the United States.
And he knew the Americans very well. And he said, we will never be able to invade the mainland United States because there's a rifle behind every blade of grass.
That's true.
And I still think that's true. There's a lot more guns around than anybody even begins to realize.
Yeah.
And I'm glad.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with that. And, understand over the last 10 years, all the gun sales that have just been skyrocketing. Don't forget about all the guns that have been in circulation since, the repeater rifle was embedded in the mid 1800s.
How many Western movies have you seen where the bad guys show up at the ranch and the husband's not there? What happens? The wife comes out with a rifle, and they stop. Yep. Well, here's
yes.
I mean, she's protecting her kids and her farm, and she may die, but she's taking some people with them. And every single time, I know it's a movie, but I'm sure it happened in real life too. She pulls out the rifle, and they stop.
Yes, and there's actually an old saying. If anybody knows anything about firearms, Samuel Colt is the one that invented the 45 caliber repeating pistol. And the old saying is, God created man.
Yeah.
Sam Colt made him equal.
Yeah. And I was reading a story the other day because I go to liberal sources too, just to kind of get an idea what they're thinking, and plus get a chuckle. They're blaming all the violence in Chicago, and it's horrendous. It's like 10 times worse than the other major city. And all the guns coming from the state of Indiana with their lax gun control laws. And I was watching the debate, and the guy said, well, let me ask you something. You're saying all these guns are coming from the state of Indiana. That's right. And they're blah, 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 blah. And he says, then why doesn't the state of Indiana have a huge gun problem and a murder problem? And the guy just sat there with like, what? He goes, why isn't the murder rate higher in Indiana than it is in Chicago if that's where all the guns are? And there is no answer, because the answer is it's safer because there's guns there.
That is correct. And also, for anyone that doesn't know anything about firearms, this whole idea that people or gangs have automatic handguns, those guns, and especially if they're fully automatic, there is no place in the United States that you can legally buy a fully automatic assault weapon, period. They are semi-automatic, not fully.
It's the stupidity that hardcore criminals and gang members will obey the gun laws. It makes zero sense.
Yeah.
I don't understand. But I'm concerned. We'll go back. Well, it even covers the Second Amendment. I'm concerned as our federal government, in this case the Biden administration, and the people that run it, start ignoring constitutional rights for individuals. And here's the part that worries me more than anything. I know what's going to eventually happen. It will start off slowly. What are state and local law enforcement going to do?
That's a very interesting question, because being that we live in, and that's another thing for any of your viewers that are not viewers, but listeners that are out of state. A lot of us consider New York in two different pieces, which is New York City and then upstate New York. I'll be interested to see what New York City does and what your small towns do in upstate New York, because in all fairness, a lot of these people during COVID, and a lot of them I can't really feel sorry for, because they were getting $300, or at some point they were getting their unemployment check, plus they were getting another $600 a week extra. And now that's been dropped down to $300 a week extra, and that was for them to survive and pay their bills. And then they said that and of course, while they were trying to figure out how to pay people, they stopped all evictions because people couldn't make money, because they were obviously they couldn't make money because they couldn't go to work because their job was shut down.
Right.
Well, when they started getting this unemployment, weren't they supposed to pay their bills? Wasn't that the deal? I mean, but now they just said, screw you, and that's it.
Yeah, and it'd be 10 times as much bureaucracy if the person had to put down who my landlord is and pay him directly. So they
correct. So, I mean, in all reality, that's just like, it's just like if you don't pay NYSEG, which is the one that supplies our electric and gas. Okay, if you don't pay them, they're going to shut your power off, and you can't act surprised if you don't pay your bill. You just can't do that.
That's gonna work itself out. It's gonna be huge disruption for a while, and I say in a year or so. I mean, there'll be a lot of hurt people. A lot of people are gonna make out, but it's gonna be like water. It's gonna seek its own level and eventually be sorted out. I'm just very much concerned about the constitutional rights slowly being taken away, like the frog in the water. You don't know that you're in boiling water until it's too late. And I'm just, if the local and state authorities don't step in, these things start getting bad, and it will, I'm wondering what's going to happen.
Well, the point is that Biden has basically said to the Supreme Court, screw you, I don't have to listen to you, by strongly suggesting the CDC to do anything. Okay? that basically says he doesn't care about the Supreme Court, and he also doesn't care about the Constitution. That by itself is extremely disturbing.
And it's also impeachable, but maybe not technically. But here's the thing. He basically said, or his mouthpiece, Jen Psaki, basically said, and I'm paraphrasing, well, if that's true, and the Supreme Court rules that extension is unlawful, we get 30 days out of it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
It's, I don't know. I really don't. I read somewhere today that Biden gave a bunch of congressional awards to all the Capitol Police that were there for the insurrection. Now, he didn't give them the Congressional Medal of Honor because they weren't military, but he gave them the Congressional Gold Award or some crap. I don't know. But that's the funny part. You know me, I'm on local radio once a month. I says to the local AM talk show guy, I said, how many of the so-called rioters / insurrectionists were armed? And the answer is none, not with firearms. I think a couple of guys had crowbars, and a couple of guys picked up fire extinguishers and things that were already in the building. So that means they didn't plan it out. They didn't bring it with them. And there was only one, to my knowledge, one gun fired at a person, and that was by a Capitol cop that killed that woman.
Yeah.
To this day, they will not disclose who the cop was.
Right, of course not.
But is the average American person really paying attention that these things are going away and they're not saying anything and they're waiting until next November?
Yeah, but what amazes me is the Democrats are pushing the insurrection.
Oh, yeah.
But they don't talk about all the protests. What about the looting? What about the fires? What about the Hart building? All those were all peaceful protests. That's the answer you're going to get. Doesn't matter. You still got a mob scene inside of a building. You have, a fire. What was it in Seattle? I think it was where they tried burning that fire station with the people still in it.
No, it wasn't a fire station.
Not fire station, but police station.
A federal building.
Yeah,
it was federal property, federal territory. I see that as no different than the Capitol building.
That is correct.
I mean,
but that was okay.
I mean, when they fired on Fort Sumter, they didn't fire the shells into the Capitol building. They fired into government property.
That's correct. But evidently, these leftists, they're just they're just putting fire on the whole situation.
I hope and I pray that it's like this, like the 15-20% that are in the middle. They're just fed up with everything on everybody's side. And when it comes around the next year, they're just keeping their mouths shut and their heads down, and they're going to protest all of this craziness with their vote. I hope that's what's going to happen.
That's really what I'm hoping for also.
Now, there's some predictions. I predicted the other day on an episode. I said that, and I was pretty generous, the Democrats are going to lose 40, I think I said 41 or 42 seats. And it's going to be 56-44 in the Senate. That was my prediction. So
right. Wow.
That's pretty high.
That's very high.
I'd be happy with 54-46. No, I think it was 54-46. I forget now. I was sitting figuring it out. But some people think there's going to be 50 seats flipped. And we're going to see. And
oh, yeah. Well, I think that's why H.R. 1 was so important to the Democrats is they're trying to hold on to what they've got.
Well, I find it very unnerving and causes me worry as an American citizen that cares about the future of the country that my granddaughter is going to live in when she grows up, that Joe Manchin and Christian Sinema are the two that are stopping from this republic from being torn down. I'm not real comfortable with that.
Thankful, but you're right. I'm not comfortable either.
Yeah, I'm happy.
I'm assuming that two of them must be in swing districts.
Well, it's funny because I've seen old clips not that long ago of Senator Sinema, and she was an ultra-lefty. Now, Joe Manchin has never been an ultra-lefty. We all know that, but he's always was the blue-collar union Democrat. And his state, what is it, plus 20 Trump, I think?
Yeah.
something like that. And I'll tell you, those two are holding it together. It's
Well, that may be the reason why they're holding it together, because if they don't and the next election rolls around, they're going to be done.
well, Sinema's in Arizona.
Right. Well, most of Arizona went red. It's just a couple of specks that turned it over in the bigger cities.
Right. But
All depends on where her district is.
I don't think guys like Joe Manchin, and I was one of them, even though I'm not a senator, of course. I'm not that high up. I was only a lowly council member, but I don't think that these old school Dems, because I left the party in 2013, I think these old school Dems don't realize that their party that they belonged to and believed in, the things they believed in, doesn't exist anymore.
Correct.
And what do? You're Joe Manchin. He used to be governor. He used to be congressman. He used to be governor. Now he's a reelected senator. And you're an old school Dem. Do you switch? Do you really do that? I mean...
Well, what's funny, too, is it's some people like to call it democratic socialism. And I'm going to say, I think it was in 1964, Ronald Reagan had his keynote speech for Barry Goldwater when he said that Americans will not accept socialism, but they will accept socialism underneath the liberal label. Now these people are just wide open and they're right out there.
Oh, they're not even
100% saying
they're not hiding it anymore.
Yeah.
They're not even hiding it.
No, they're not. No.
But
it's crazy.
Then why isn't Joe Manchin and hundreds of other state elected officials, local elected officials, especially they're in southern states or western, or midwestern or western states, why aren't they leaving?
I don't know.
I don't get it either. I don't get it.
I don't know.
I know the normal person doesn't want to change their registration. They just vote how they want, and that's fine. But as elected official, I'll tell you the truth. Manchin's in a perfect spot. If he sat down with the RNC,
yeah, he is.
He sat down with the RNC right now and said, hey, I understand the fact that you can't let me run unopposed. I appreciate that. But if you do not help the Democratic candidate next time and raise any money for that individual, he or she, I'll switch parties. I don't even know if that's legal. But
I have no idea.
But a wink and a nod, maybe. I don't know. And I'm surprised he hasn't done it yet. Or maybe he's waiting for the midterms. I think everybody's, even Trump, is waiting for the midterms.
Yep.
And that's the other thing. Maybe that'll be a topic for the next episode with us is, should Trump run or not?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But anyway, I have to hopefully believe in the system. We'll just leave it at this because we're coming up on an hour and 10 minutes. I got to believe that the system will hold. It's held so far. It's been stretched. It's been beat up. It's been mangled, but it's always held together. And I have to believe that the rule of law, and that's been the thing for the United States that the world envies. We are a nation of laws, period. And
that is correct.
And I'm hoping that Supreme Court does its job. And I'm hoping that if things start getting bad, and they will, that state and local authorities, i.e. law enforcement, state troopers, county sheriffs, police chiefs, step in and say no. And
that's what happened with the whole idea that you can't meet at your house with your relatives anymore. I remember that because some of us were joking about it. And I said, well, I'm going to be having my Thanksgiving speakeasy. And of course, a lot of sheriffs said, no, we're not going to enforce this. And of course, Cuomo had a fit over it.
Well, yeah, when that gym owner, I believe the sheriff came and I saw the video and he told him to have a nice day. 2 hours later, the state troopers came. Now,
right.
And there's been a lot of people arrested for having Thanksgiving dinner, Easter, birthday parties, weddings. And local law enforcement has cited these people and sometimes arrested them. So And here's the other thing. We can talk about law enforcement maybe in another episode, but a lot of the good cops have left, which leaves the crappy ones. And now,
which things are going to get worse.
And with defund the police, now they want to put more money back in, which means rookie cops. There's nothing against a rookie cop, but they don't have the on-street experience, and something's bad's going to happen. So we're putting in cops with no experience. A good portion of them crappy cops is the reason why they stayed, and the other 20% that are decent cops are going to have to put up with the best they can. That's a formula for disaster.
Well, one concern that I really have, especially with a lot of police officers that are close to retirement or retiring, or they're going to other police agencies for jobs and leaving the inner cities. But now, when they try to add more cops to compensate for the losses, at what point are they going to have to start lowering hiring standards? And that's when things are really going to get bad.
Yeah, I mean, that's not so much just the physical requirements, some of the mental requirements.
Yeah, mental requirements.
It reminds me, do you remember the movie Gladiator?
Yeah.
Remember at the end when he's fighting the Emperor and he cheats and stabs him? And the Emperor turns to the Roman guards that are circled all around them and asks for a sword. And they go to pull him out, and the head guy goes, "Sheathe your swords." In other words, we're not going along with your bullshit anymore.
Right.
That's what I hope happens, but I hope nobody dies, of course. But the point is still made. It gets to a point where the military arm, in this case law enforcement, just simply says, no, we're not doing this anymore.
Correct.
And if you screw with my pension, you screw with my pension, I have to look myself in the mirror 20 years from now when I talk to my granddaughter and ask her why I put people in jail for having a birthday party. And I hope that happens. I really do.
Yeah.
But anyway, Tennessee's looking better and better. For those of you that are wondering, we live in Binghamton. Now, those who are not familiar with upstate New York, most people know where Syracuse is. It's in the middle of upstate. If you go directly south, a little over 60 miles, we're right about 10 miles north of the Pennsylvania border, right in the center. Which, if you saw the border between New York and Pennsylvania on the top, on the northern border, we're right in the center of that, about 10 miles, 12 miles above the PA border. So I'll give you an idea where we're at. And it's not New York City, and it might as well be Mars compared to Earth.
Yeah, and that's the truth.
But anyway, it was great. I mean, we do this all the time anyway, and I thought we'd do it, as a recording. And I'll probably bust this up.
Yeah, why not?
I'll probably bust this up in maybe 3 different episodes, but I'll edit it out and take out the pauses in between. And I think this was really cool. I really enjoyed it a lot because, you and I, we enjoy this stuff, and I hope other people do as well.
Absolutely, and I'm looking forward to our next chat that's being recorded.
Yeah, all right. Stay on the line. I'm going to stop recording.
All right.
I just want to say thanks, Mike, for shooting the breeze with me. And look for Mike and I and other guests in the future. Mike's going to be a regular. I just have a sneaking suspicion. And as I always say, until next time, goodbye and good luck.